Hi everyone, welcome to North and South podcast. This is Tim speaking, and today is I wouldn't say a politics podcast exclusively. I think it's basically about podcasting, bit of creativity, and also about just general well-being among the community. Because today I'm speaking to Jack Walton, who is an editor and writer for a local online newspaper called The Post in the Liverpool area. So Jack, I'm a subscriber to the Post. It's fantastic. What is it, and would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you very much, first of all. Really kind of you, and pleased to be on. So the Post, yeah, it's basically long form. So it's an online site. Started up about 2 years ago. Well, maybe not quite, maybe 18 months. I've been there for about 8 months, and yeah, it's so half of our content is free for anyone, completely accessible on a Monday and a Sunday, because you want it to be accessible. However, it's reader funded, so you can pay sign up for £7 a month or £65 a year, and you will get 4 editions a week. And that's essentially how it's entirely funded. And yeah, as I say, it's long form, so it's trying to sort of go back to a slightly more considered, nuanced, taking its time kind of approach with the stories we do.
Brilliant. And I think one of the things about the Post is I've very much heard of it through the grapevine, through people, grassroots community people in the Liverpool area. And your model is very much about people finding out about what you do, accessing the site, and then if they like it, subscribing. But I think what
Yeah.
you said about those kind of like deep dives into local issues, you're very much independent and funded by the readers. How important is that in giving you a platform to write about whatever you want?
Yeah, I mean it's really important because obviously if someone is kind of being reader funded, it almost forces you in a way to take that kind of approach to it because that's what people kind of want. That's what they think is lacking in local media. There's enough quantity, there's tons of quantity, but people think there's a little bit of a lack of quality. And if you're going to make people pay for something, then it can't be. It has to. It sort of forces the quality bar up, and yeah, it's just been amazing to see how people have taken to it really. So it's just past the 1,000 paying subscriber mark last month. That was like a big moment. But yeah, I mean, we get so many lovely comments and things on Facebook, Twitter. So I mean, it's been great to see how much people have appreciated it.
I remember when I heard that there was a local Liverpool media channel, which is on, I think you can get it through Freeview.
Mm.
And, without going into too much detail, I wouldn't say it's particularly independently minded. And I've I stopped reading local newspapers in the Liverpool area many years ago because of their negativity and their what I would say, shallow model, as it were. But the Post, I find it really refreshing, particularly in an age where you feel like local news has just gone and everyone
Mm.
seems to be dominated by this like social media stuff and this national picture and completely neglecting local news. And the level of detail that you go into is phenomenal. So, for example, there was a recent article about the toxic levels of air in the Liverpool area, and you had a lot
Mm.
of scientific research, in-depth research, and I don't think I've read an article that good about that issue because that's been a live issue at the community level for many years. You get a little bit of a mention here and there in some of the traditional media, but it allows you to really do a deep dive and look into it. And when I went onto the Post, I just said, I've never read anything like this before. This is brilliant. And that's why I subscribed. So that level of analysis and scratching the surface, it really allows you to go in deep and to look at things that maybe other media won't look at. How have you found the kind of reaction to yourselves from the traditional media? Has there been any kind of pushback from them and from local political structures?
Well, yeah, I mean, they like about a year ago now, the Reach PLC, who own the Echo and the MEN in Manchester, and some national titles, and then like tons of various local titles all across the country. I think there's like 100 and something. So yeah, about a year ago, they had a sort of Google-funded newsletter startup, which they called the Liverpool Daily Post. Which, in fairness to them, that is the part of their brand when it used to be back the Echo and Post. But it did feel like taking Google funding to start a newsletter sent out by email with the same name. was sort of like, it felt like a slightly aggressive move. Other than that, not tons. That was the kind of significant thing. But I mean, what you said about the dearth of quality in local media is difficult because the model that they've got now at Reach PLC, which is essentially like eyeballs are the sort of most important thing, and it doesn't really matter where those eyeballs come from because it's all driven by ad revenue. So it doesn't really matter if a reader on the Echo website is in Kent or London or wherever. It's still a click, and it's still driving that ad revenue. And in fairness to them, these things are really difficult to fund. The model they've clearly gone towards, I don't think works. I think the quality gets driven down, and you have journalists who are talented journalists forced to write 6, 10 pieces a day, and you can never produce anything of any huge quality if you're churning things out that quickly. But as I say, it's not like there's an easy solution or that the subscriber funded model would work for everyone. They've encountered a problem which I don't necessarily know what the answer to that is for them.
Yeah, I think one of the bigger examples of that recently is, again, just to go across the pond, is the Fox News issues which they've had recently over in the United States, which is quite a populist right-wing news channel that relies on ad revenue. But because of that, they have to deliver infotainment to work to kind of increases the amount of people watching, and that seems to be their modus operandi to increase the amount of money coming in, etc. And obviously, if things go wrong, then that model is, at risk. And as you said, it's not an easy thing to do to get this balance right. But one thing I've noticed about the Post is it's investigative journalism. It looks like you go into detail, you really research things and get to the heart of the issue. And I think that's one of the advantages of the Post is you're not just looking for that short-term click, you're looking to provide longer-term quality. How long do you take to produce these long articles? There's obviously a lot of time and research that goes into them. Is that right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So obviously it varies. The one that we did about the Eldonian village and the community-based housing association, and basically for those who haven't read it, a really sort of pioneering social housing community in Vauxhall, sprung up in the sort of 1980s, almost like rose from the rubble of all the sort of slum clearances and all that kind of thing in that area. And over time, the residents found out basically in the last few years that most of their community assets, so the gym and the care home and the nursery and so on, had all been sort of sold off through a complicated web of transfers, and were all sort of sitting, in with firms in like the British Virgin Islands and Nevis and all this kind of thing. That story, 5 months, I think, 4 or 5 months. So that was really the longest one we've done. A couple of my colleagues, Molly and Harry, did one about Gerard Woodhouse, the councillor, and sort of delved into a detail about his kind of less than truthful statements in the local press. So we say that was maybe 4 months. So yeah, I mean, those are rare cases. We don't do many that are that long, but often a month or 6 weeks or so. Yeah.
But the fruit of that is these fantastic articles, which matter to people. I think it matters to people, and it speaks to people saying this is what's happening in your community. It's not just about a newspaper cover about the latest nonsense. It is really looking at things in detail. And the Eldonian one, that was very interesting because it kind of was spawned from, as you say, the regeneration. Like, it's all about local community regeneration. And guess what? A lot of the facilities there are owned by offshore interests, etc. And you just wouldn't hear that through the traditional media to the same extent. How can people help? I mean, I subscribe. Obviously, people can read the Post online for free. Is there anything else people can do to get involved in your good work? And also, what is the difference between your Post and the Liverpool Post newspaper that used to be around? Is there a clear difference between them?
So what can people do to help? I mean, the obvious thing is subscribing. That's always nice. But as I said earlier, like we get tons of amazing comments on Twitter, Facebook, people sharing articles, and when you're sort of a startup type thing as we are, that's kind of an essential part of spreading it, isn't it? It's just word of mouth. It's just if people like an article, tell people about it, share it, and if you like a number of them, then maybe consider signing up. On the Liverpool Daily Post, I mean, I think the thing with the Daily Post is sort of before my time, so I'm not really perfectly positioned to comment. But I think the thing was that a lot of people considered the Post the kind of really high quality one as compared to the Echo, and the Echo was a sort of little more. I don't know. I mean, I might be slightly wrong on this, but the Echo was a little bit more like sort of slightly more tabloidy one, and then the Post had some really good writers and actually did some interesting stuff. So I suppose us using the name was in a sense a sort of maybe not go as far as say a homage, but a sort of they were Liverpool has had high quality local media in the past, and the fact that it doesn't now is something that we should all be concerned about.
Absolutely. And I think one of the big examples of that is, the amount of turnout that you get for national elections and say the Brexit referendum, where this kind of national picture is portrayed as the dominant thing. So I don't know, you look at the BBC, etc., they focus on the national stuff, and a lot of the media do, but without local newspapers that go in depth, there's very little on the differences and the key issues locally and what people can do about them. And for example, I found that like trying to find out about council elections and local issues can be very, 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 very difficult because of the lack of media. And I spoke to a few independent councillors about how difficult it is for them to get their messages out there when they're standing against traditional parties. But I think that the local politics or the lack of turnout often in local politics is because of the lack of quality local media, basically. And I think that if local media is more successful and is more relevant, it just increases the amount of people who turn out. I mean, I think that some of the turnout for local elections in Liverpool is really, really low. I know in Bootle, which is just north of Liverpool, it's basically 1 in 4. You often get parties which are entrenched, but there's a lot of scope, I think, in local media to get local politics out there and discussed. And I know you've done some great articles on, I think you did one recently with the only Tory, is it candidate or councillor in Liverpool?
So he's a lecturer of British politics, but he chairs the local Conservatives.
Yeah. But that was a good discussion. And traditionally, like as you say, or as it hinted in the article, like Liverpool's very anti-conservative in the modern age. And that gentleman, I forget his surname. Was it
David Jeffrey? He's called Dr.
Jeffrey. Sorry, and it was a very good article. And also, you've done articles on the allegations of corruption in Liverpool Council in recent years with Joe Anderson, who's also been on the site to defend himself. You've given him a voice, etc. And I think bringing those issues to the fore, I think that can definitely reconnect voters in local media. And I think that that's another big potential for the Post moving forward. What are your plans for the future?
So I mean, try not to look too far ahead. I mean, as I said, with the passing the 1,000 member thing, everything was very geared onto that point. So it was very, lots of our newsletters. Can we get another 50 subscribers? Can we get another 6? Can we get that line? Then you're there. You're sort of like, well, now it's 2,000, isn't it? You feel like you're at the foot of a mountain again. But continuing to, it's not all about just the number. Obviously, I mean, we do need those people to continue to expand. But we're hiring a new staff member, and it's another full-time staff member for Liverpool at the end of we're May now, aren't we? So at the end of this month. So that's a big step forward for us. But yeah, I mean, other than that, it's a few individual long-term projects that I've been trying to drag towards a conclusion. But yeah, other than that, I don't try not to think too far ahead with it.
Yeah, no, I think it's important to just see how things develop as well, because you seem to have your tentacles out and you're responding to what people are saying. We've already discussed some of the biggest stories you've put out.
Yeah.
You haven't mentioned some of the big stories that have been important to yourselves.
Yeah, so I mean, the one personally was the Eldonian thing, but there are definitely others. Sort of more recently, you mentioned the air pollution one, and we were really pleased with that. Our piece on the riots, protests outside the Suites Hotel in Knowsley was that February, I think. I was really pleased with what we produced there because there was obviously a lot of coverage of that situation. Local media, national media coverage, some of it good, but I feel like we produced the most comprehensive version of events, for that night and in a night of big significance. So I was pleased with that one. Yeah, the Eldonian one's our most read story. I think the next after that is the Joe Anderson interview. So those are the kind of two that have And the Gerard Woodhouse one was very high up as well. So those are the kind of three that have
Yeah,
caught the most attention, I think.
yeah. And those latter three, they're to do with like local council, etc. And
Yeah,
which we've already discussed, is often quite neglected. It's not at the forefront of people's minds, but that's often, there's been a lot of cuts to local government since 2010 in particular. And I think as the front line becomes less funded, as it were, in terms of children's services, etc., I think that good news is going to be increasingly important as we move forward. And I think that's a great strength of the Post. Now, you've already mentioned you've got a couple of full-time employees now at the Post, and then other people who are involved. Do you have a few
yeah.
other sister newspapers as well around the country? Because there's lots of info about what you do in your model and how it works on the website, which we'll share in the notes as well. But
Yeah, great.
you've got a few other newspapers that you work with as well, is that right?
Yeah, so our editor Yoshi originally started this project in Manchester. I think he moved up in, I don't know, would have been near the start of the pandemic, I think, or around about that time. And the Manchester have the Manchester Mill, which is as the first one. It's kind of like the it's led the way. It's been really successful. They've done amazing things over there. And then Sheffield, so a journalist called Dan Hayes started up. So it's all within the same umbrella, but sort of Dan's leading the Sheffield project, and then the Post is the newest of the three. And yes, so it was originally Molly, a colleague. She's back in Manchester now, so I'm sort of doing the Post at the minute, and we're also, as I say, hiring.
Excellent. But I just hope that the Post continues to go from strength to strength. Now, as you said, you can read it through your phone, can't you? I've downloaded Substack. I don't know if you want to give Substack free advertising, but I downloaded the app on Substack, and then when I get an email, or I just click in there and click on the Liverpool Post, it gives me all the latest articles because I'm subscribed. People can go on their laptops and have it in front of them and read it, in that fashion as well. So how do you like to read the Post? What's your way of keeping up to speed with it all?
Yeah, I'm mostly on my laptop, I suppose, because I
Yeah,
try not to reread them too much, though. Sort of like poring over it, looking for any
yeah,
looking for any error or
yeah,
anything I've
yeah.
let myself down with. Especially
Yeah,
to just like move on to the next one.
yeah, that's true. And I mean, I read national newspapers at the weekends, but I must admit the Post has just been a breath of fresh air. So keep up the good
Thank you.
work, and thank you very much for giving me some time on Bank Holiday Monday as well. Is there anything you want to add before we finish? We'll put all notes in the Post with the podcast notes. But also, thanks for mentioning this podcast as well on your website and on your app,
Yes.
etc. I appreciate that, and I just want to recommend the Post to people. But anything else you want to say before we finish?
No, only that, as I say, if you want to sign up, but you don't want to, put the financial commitment in straight away, sign up as a free subscriber, see if you like it. You'll get two emails a week, and yeah, just take it from there. A massive thanks for having me on.
No worries, and everyone out there, check out the Post. And there's good as well when you go on the homepage. It's got different things, and you can flick through, read different articles, and it's well
Yeah,
laid out. So keep up the good work, and thanks, Jack, for coming on. And I hope the Post continues to go from strength to strength. It's been fantastic, I think, for local politics, local media, and also providing a model that isn't reliant on advertising, but on genuine interest about local issues in depth. So well done. Thanks for coming on, and thanks very much, Jack, for giving us your time, and keep up the good work.
brilliant. Thank you.
Cheers.